But you didn't know, I'm actually just going to do some M&M rapping for 5 minutes.
Okay, so go.
So this is a fundamental question. Are you being the right person for DevOps? We're all operations people. And chances are the answer is no. No, we're not, because that's not how we've been geared or wired. This talk came from a sign that my wife put in our kitchen to help with our relationship, not in a bad way, but just a reminder that a successful marriage isn't about finding the perfect person for you, which is what we're always told. It's about being the right person. And then we also see in the Phoenix Project where Eric, the person coming onto the board, talks about the relationship between the business and between IT. It's like a dysfunctional marriage. Each feels hostage and helpless. So on the dev side, they're like, why does this have to take so long? Why can't you give me what I need? I think you've all heard these things, right? If I wait for your processes, I'll never be able to get anything done. And on the ops side, we have a different perspective. We are more asking the question, why can't you be more patient? Why can't you use the services and the capabilities that I've provided? Why are you having to go out somewhere else and do this? And if we don't have these processes, you don't understand the risks and the liability and the operations and manageability challenges we have. So being the right person for DevOps is really being more than just whatever your role is. It's understanding the influence and impact that your role has. So for the rest of the talk, we're going to go through some things that you can do right away in order to help you with this. First, it's all about communication, right? Learn about your partner in this DevOps environment. And while these look like they were drawn by a 9-year-old child, I drew them, but get to know the person, ask what they did over the weekend, understand their interests and concerns. Part of doing this is spending more time listening instead of talking. We're all engineers. We like to talk. Even as introverts, we like to talk. But we need to spend more time listening to other people, especially those who we're trying to work with. And remember that listening and hearing are two totally different things, right? I can listen to Damon's talk, but the question is did I actually hear it, right? Or hear it and listen, right? Being able to absorb what's being said, right? So you want to listen actively. Right? You want to pay attention to what's happening, right? You want to respond to that person selflessly. I understand what you're saying. That sounds like it sucks. I wonder if we can fix that and make that process better or make this whole thing better. This then leads to selflessness, starting to think about other people, other people's needs. Remember, in IT operations, it's not just about whether we keep the lights on, it's about whether we're adding value. So how do you impact other people? And then being sensitive to what other people's needs are. If you see that a group is struggling or having trouble, ask questions, understand what's going on, offer help. Maybe you can be a big part of implementing containers and Docker or Kubernetes into the environment. And as you gain knowledge and as you work with individuals on the other side of the field, share your knowledge. Don't hold it for yourself. Just because you're really smart about something doesn't mean that you're making the organization and the relationship any better. So there's no stupid questions. And then when you screw up, and you all will screw up, we all have, right? Be transparent about what happened. Work with people in the other organizations in your group to try to find ways to prevent that from happening again. Let them know what you're doing to prevent it. Now, when you think about yourself in a relationship, it's really important to maintain a sense of self, taking care of yourself, have your interests, sharing your interests. Remember, we listened before, now it's time to share. Being more than just the work that you do, and then bringing those interests into the work that you do. Take time and enjoy your vacations. We all have to recharge. If you don't get any time off, that Elon Musk was just saying he hasn't had a vacation since 2001. That's not healthy. I actually advocate for mental health days. It's like a sick day, but for your brain and your emotions. Also, expand your knowledge and grow. Right? Increase your depth in the things that you're passionate about and care about, but be interested and curious about things that are outside of your core experience and your core depth. And as you work with people and you start working together, celebrate accomplishments, right? So you get through a release and nothing broke. It will happen eventually. So celebrate that. Get excited. And when people do a great job, tell them in front of other people, right? Remember, all work and no play makes Jack a dull, dull boy, right? So when you celebrate these milestones, you do something fun with the other people. You know about their interest, find a common interest and do it. And then resync about what your next objective is. So keep in mind that being the right person is not about becoming more than what you were. It's about looking at the needs of other people, improving what you're delivering, and improving yourself along the way so that you're creating a much better relationship. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Good job, Josh. Now I'm welcoming to the stage Fred Moyer.
Hello. That's a tough act to follow. But let's see if I can do a somewhat technical talk in 5 minutes or less.
We got the slides ready.
Okay.
Go.
So I'm going to talk about latency SLOs done right. I'm Fred Moyer. I'm a developer evangelist for Circonus, which means I'm an engineer who talks to people, or like Josh said, listens to people. And I'm going to talk about how we can do service level objectives. If anyone here went to SRECon, I think it was in Dusseldorf, there was a workshop put on by Google that talked about service level objectives and how to do those with latency. So a latency service level indicator is like the proportion of valid requests served faster than a threshold. That differs a little bit from a service level objective, which is something you want to achieve. An example objective could be, I want to make 99% of my homepage requests served in less than 100 milliseconds. And this is really a bit more of a business-focused goal. So here's a graph that probably most people have seen who've run a monitoring system. I've got my percentiles here. And my 90th percentile is in buckets over about 5-minute intervals over this portion. So what's the 90th percentile across the entire month? I'll give you a hint. It's not an average of each 90th percentile shown. That's a common anti-pattern that I see people employ for calculating percentiles. Here's a bit of a more extreme example. I've got my target SLO threshold here, and my 90th percentile calculated over this range varies a lot more. I can't take this and average it and get the same thing. So how can we rethink computing SLO latencies? We have a few approaches. We can compute it from stored logs. We can count the number of bad requests, or we can use what are called histograms, which are basically distributions to store latency distributions. So the first approach, computing this from log data, is possible with many tools. Hat tip to Splunk, who's hosting this. You can also do that with elk, awk, grep, but it's not always tenable for tens of millions of data points. It's tough to do in real time. But I have done it with Splunk, and this is an example command you can use to do it. You've got some data, and you run the perk90 function on it, and that'll give you your 90th percentile over that data range. Second approach is you can calculate the number of bad requests. Here I've got the number of total requests up here and the number of bad requests below, which are requests which exceeded your threshold. Now, once I have something like this, I can calculate it by saying, I want to take 100 and subtract the number of bad requests divided by the number of total requests times 100, and I get essentially my SLO. But the problem is you have to choose your latency threshold up front. And it prohibits you from going back and seeing, changing your SLO retroactively. So the third approach is to use histograms, also known as distributions. They allow you to calculate arbitrary quantiles at different time ranges. They can be a bit challenging with some because you have to choose the bins. Here's 3 examples of different types of histograms you can use. Top one has an error. I copy-pasted from the SLO workshop. That should be HTTP. But there's a couple different options you can use. This is a log linear histogram, which has buckets of every order of magnitude has 90 different buckets. You can see the bucket size goes up here. And using this, you can calculate different percentiles. And if we take a histogram like that and plot it over time, we can get something like a heat map, which is a really cool visualization that helps us to see if we're meeting our SLO. This is a heat map of a cluster of 10 load balancers. There's about 5 million data points over about a month here. So if we have histogram data, we can use that to calculate if we're meeting our SLO by taking, adding up the buckets, taking the count of requests that are below my SLO threshold, in this case 100 milliseconds, dividing that by the total count and multiplying it by 100. And the reason this is a good approach is because with operations data, sometimes we get weird modes like this. If you overlay percentiles on a dual mode graph like this, it's not something that you can approximate with just percentiles. And here's an even worse example. If you've got a highly multimodal system, if you've got a disk subsystem that's caching a lot of writes or has bad sectors and retries, you're going to see really odd distribution graphs of latency. And so I've got 30 seconds for questions about this. Anyone? Who here uses SLOs in their day-to-day work? Awesome. Who here has seen some of the stuff that Google's put out? They've got some really great videos. SLAs, SLOs, SLIs, oh my. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Fred. That was brilliant. Technical talk in that amount of time. Next up, we've got Dave Nielsen.
All right. This is going to go fast. Holy cow. I don't give talks this short. I do give short talks, but 5 minutes.
Okay, we've got the slides ready.
Auto-advancing slides.
And go.
Okay, my name is Dave. I've run a lot of unconferences, mostly around cloud computing. This is actually the first session grid we created at the first Cloud Camp about 10 years ago. And I want to talk to you about some of the thoughts I have around building a platform as a service with things like Kubernetes and Redis, which is where I work. By the way, people don't really get this, but Redis is crazy popular. It really is. According to some, it's the most popular database on AWS. Why would that be? It's usually not your first choice database, but it's incredibly popular as a second choice database. You may not know what this is from. This is from 2001. It's actually from 2010, Space Odyssey, reflecting back. I like it because it reminds me of when you look at Redis, you see a key value database, but the reality is it's full of tons of data structures. And these data structures give you capabilities that you just cannot find anywhere else, especially when you're having to scale. And that's what makes Redis so popular, because you simply cannot solve these problems any other way. We're just about to add Redis streams, by the way, which should give Kafka a run for its money. Anyway, like Fortnite uses it to cache. Twitter uses it as like a primary database. All that data you see is basically in Redis. Netflix uses it their leaderboard. All billions of their APIs per second go into Redis. Lyft for geospatial search for the cars move around. Pinterest for who's online. Lots and lots of users. But what I'm really here to talk to you about is microservices. Everyone's using microservices. We should all use microservices. Right now, why aren't you making microservices instead of listening to me? Well, the reality is that it's a little bit overhyped. And obviously monoliths can be very heavy and they can be very slow to move all that code at one time. And so there's a lot of challenges around monoliths, but it's actually a really great place to start, especially when you're trying to form your ideas. So I actually do recommend you start off with something simple. But eventually what happens is you got this monolith, it's a lot of code, a lot of functionality all in one place. You're having to remember a lot of commands, a lot of different things going on. So it gets kind of complicated to have all of that in one giant chunk of code, all of the people working on one. So it's a good idea to decompose that application and start to break it up into microservices. Although I do recommend you think about doing maybe mini services first, because microservices is kind of like super advanced version. So mini services, you just start decomposing a couple things first. And then what you're really doing is you're starting to go from cattle, from pets that you've named all your services to cattle. And so that's kind of what you want to do. And start to not remember all the individual services or containers at least. But now you got lots and lots of things to remember. Things can go sideways. You can get split brain. All sorts of problems can happen because you're dealing with massive numbers of things. And so you need some technology to help you manage all this. And that's really what I think where we're headed as a DevOps or sysadmin. We're headed in that direction of building platform as a service basically for our users, which is great if you're some superstar. But for me, it's really more like this. I feel like I'm not only going to hurt myself, I'm going to hurt someone else. So, I think that there's just got to be tools. There's got to be a lot coming. What we really want as developers on the other end is the easy button, right? Where like, hey, I do this and it pushes my code and everything's great. But the reality is like, whoa, wait, I want rewind, undo, emergency button to get back. So there's a lot that you're trying to offer to these developers, and it's really a lot to do. Well, in comes Kubernetes and of course containers. And we've got all these different platforms now we can use. In the cloud, we've got the software platforms, we've got lots of choices. So it really does seem like Kubernetes is the way to go. I think that's the way to go. But That's just the starting point. You've got lots of options within Kubernetes itself. For example, developers, they can choose to write code on their laptop, push it into the cloud, or they can use the Docker Community Edition and run Kubernetes in Docker. Whoa. And you can use Minikube on your laptop. But you might also want to push your code instead of just containers, and then you might use Cloud Foundry or something like that, or Heroku. But wait, there's more. Before you even move into microservices, let's think about just simply scaling. That's where something like Redis comes in, because Redis helps you scale your monolith. But it also becomes very, very popular in microservices. So definitely look at Redis. All right, back to managing all this stuff. What we want is declarative. We want things to be able to deploy and take care, and let something like Kubernetes take care of it. We've got YAML. We've got Helm charts. Operators. Operators are great when you have something that's stateful and you don't want to actually have it overwrite itself. You certainly don't want your database to go down and have it then start over again, right? You also need service discovery, because there's so many of these things. You can't manage all the IP addresses, the locations, so you need somehow to be able to say, I want to call that Redis server number 1, or whatever you call it. And you also need service brokers to be able to find and deploy these things, especially for developers who have a catalog and they want to be able to find the services they want to use in their application, and you need a service broker to be able to automate that. So there's a lot going on, but we're getting close. And so closing thoughts here is that certainly one size does not fit all. There's lots of different options, but use Kubernetes. You want to start with a monolith, maybe go to a mini service first, and then eventually head towards microservices. Use Redis. The future is going to be these kind of people. So actually start thinking about like what that looks like for them, and maybe that'll help you give a clue as well. All right, thank you very much.
Brilliant. Nicely done, Dave. Good job. Next up, one of my personal heroes, Paul Reed.
No pressure there. Thank you.
Okay, let's get the slides.
I know.
And
all right,
go.
This is the 5 dirty words of CI. My Twitter name's on the next slide, so if this is a train wreck, you can look at the Twitter name there and make fun of me on Twitter. So the first question I have for all of you is, how many people here do continuous integration? Great, this talk is not about continuous integration. It's about continuous improvement. So how many people do postmortems, retrospectives, things like that? We heard blameless. Yeah, all right. This is a talk about the 5 dirty words of that kind of CI. Root cause analysis. Who does root cause analysis? Oh, it's such a dirty word, because it gives us the idea that if we could find just the one cause that would solve our problem, it would solve all the problems. One of the things I find most amusing about root cause analysis is people come up to me and they say, we found the root cause. Here's 8 of them. That's not a root cause if you have multiple root causes. What should you say instead? Well, use a term like proximate causes. But don't forget the limitations of this. The real thing here is that even if you remove all of these proximate causes, it doesn't necessarily mean that the incident won't recur. And that's one of the fallacies of root cause analysis, and also this idea that everything is very linear. Next up, 5 whys. Who does 5 whys? Yeah, some people love the 5 whys. I actually had to put the slide up, the next one, because of Damon, when he was talking about like how many of your postmortems look something like this. Speed guide to postmortems. What the hell happened? Why? That's what the hell happened. Go write a test, meeting adjourned. When you're trying to do continuous improvement, asking why repeatedly is not really going to give you a lot of good information. It always sounded like a parrot to me too. Why? So just no. A couple other models you can think of, the Swiss cheese model or the systemic model. We can talk about in open spaces if you want to talk about those. That's a better model than this linear 5 whys root cause. Human error. How many people have said an incident was caused by human error? This is bad stuff. It's interesting because human error is, again, just where we decide to stop looking. It's where we say, well, the human made the mistake. That's it. We're done. Who remembered that S3 outage a few months ago? Yeah. If you read Amazon's retro on this, they don't use the term human error once, despite the fact that it was kicked off by an engineer mistyping a command. You won't see it in the retro. Stop using human error as an explanation, and then keep not using it. Human error, not really a thing. It's just where we decide to stop looking in the system for contributing factors. Why didn't you should have, these are called counterfactuals. How many people in their retros hear this? Why didn't you look at that metric? Didn't you see, why did you type RM-RF as opposed to some other command. The problem with counterfactuals is this is talking about a reality that never existed. It's like we're going in and discussing these alternate timelines and trying to figure out what we were thinking in these alternate timelines. It's not particularly useful in a continuous improvement context. So don't focus on those alternate realities, rather talk about how actual events unfolded. You're gonna get much more value out of that than asking people, why did you not do X? It's like, I already didn't not do that, so don't ask me why I didn't do it. Best practice. Who likes best practices? Who likes their best practices? Who likes other people's best practices? Yeah, see, less hands go up that time. This next slide is from a conference where somebody was like, this is industry best practice. Management loves that because we're not doing some weird one-off. Yeah, like Netflix and Amazon. How do you think those people got what we think of as best practice? They looked at their own context and solved their problem. So we can't steal that. We need to talk about good practice, or if we're going to use best practice, at least understand that it only applies to a simple, obvious systems domain, not the complicated and complex systems that we work in. So when you're looking at continuous improvement, it's not linear, so you don't do continuous improvement once. That's the continuous part. Practical continuous improvement respects reality, and it treats people like the professionals that they are. And that's really important if you're looking at this. Now, if you're doing actual continuous integration, by the way, 5 dirty words there, broken builds, builds should be fixed. That's the point of CI. Flappers, those are tests that go red and green. If they're flapping, you should remove them or fix the test. I can't tell you how many times I've seen broken tests that are in CI that stay there. Bob's Mac Mini.local, like you've got some rando machine building all of your mobile software. That's cool, don't do that. Merge windows, you should be developing this stuff on trunk. And if you've got a Jenkins build number and you're encoding that through your pipeline, that's a problem. And that's all I got.
Fantastic, Paul. Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, the inestimable, or maybe estimable, Corey Quinn.
Yeah. So we did a root cause analysis as part of that last talk and our blameless postmortem and found out it was all J. Paul Reed's fault.
And go.
Exactly. All right, Corey, you can do this. You're good enough. You're smart enough. And gosh darn it, people like you. Hello, and thank you for inviting me here to your company's board meeting. Although later, none of you will remember actually having extended an invitation. Don't worry, I'm not going to stop talking long enough to take questions from any of you. So that problem's just completely gone. You probably recognize my company from airport enterprise ads that make no sense. That's fine. You'll notice there's no call to action, there's no URL, there's no buy button. The entire purpose of this is so that when I'm standing in front of you, you don't ask me who the hell I am. Now, let's talk a little bit about how my company's product works. I'm not going to explain it to you, and if you ask me any questions, I will not particularly subtly imply that you're the dumb one. This is all part of the plan, because I'm not here to talk to you about implementation. I'm not here to talk at boots on the ground level, or a 10,000-foot view, or a 30,000-foot view. I'm here to give you the orbital perspective. Let's talk strategy. Let's talk the new. You may believe it, you may not. It doesn't really matter to me, because later I'm going to take the man or woman who makes a decision out to play golf and make the actual sale there. That was a joke. You're a Fortune 500 company. Of course the decision maker's a man. Diversity? That's someone else's problem. Now, what I sell isn't going to solve your actual problem. You will be amazed, astounded, and yes, grateful at how little that actually matters to anything. Because when the finger of blame comes to point at someone, it's not going to be pointing at you. You're doing everything right. You're bringing me in. And it's not just me who says that. We're in the good part of the Gartner Magic Quadrant. That's up and to the right. Low and to the left is niche players, which is Gartner speak for shitty. We're not there, and we pay good money to not be there. Once we pulled that off, we advertise that fact in every single in-flight magazine on the planet, which is where your CIO gets their strategic roadmap from. We know our customers. Sure, you have alternatives. Instead, you can either hire some open source hippie who will go ahead and solve your problem in 20 minutes, or work with one of our partners to bring in a team of MBA students who will work 120 hours a week and bill you for 40. Your move, guess which is more defensible? What that dirty, smelly hippie doesn't understand is that the halls of power are greased with favors. Hey, Ted, you remember to grease the hallway? People do business with friends more than anything else. They don't make buying decisions based on things other than that. Is this skeezy? Yeah, a little bit. But our company is not in the business of saving the whales. If that's what you want to do, terrific. I allowed you. Go work for UNICEF. They're not on my client list. Doing business together is a win for you and a win for me. It helps me hit my numbers for the quarter, and it helps you skate beautifully around existential problems that probably aren't in your real wheelhouse. And besides, we have glossy brochures that make this awesome. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, the time is meow. There has never been a better time to bring aboard an enterprise solutions provider to partner with a Fortune 500 enterprise. Unfortunately, I will not be staying to take questions. It turns out there's someone else who desperately needs whatever the hell it is my company or product actually does. I haven't bothered to find that out. Again, it's amazing how little that actually matters to anything. So that's the orbital view. We descend now through the 30,000-foot view and down through the 10,000-foot view to meet everyone where they are. Remember, I'm talking to the board. And that I will think of you fondly on my yacht later when I name it after you, as my constant ongoing reminder that you are all C-level executives. My name's Corey Quinn. I write a snarky, sarcastic newsletter every week, but during the day, I'm an independent consultant where the only problem I solve is I fix the horrifying AWS bill. And I don't sell like that almost 2/3 of the time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Andy. Let's talk about open spaces. Who's done an open space before? Some folks have, yes? All right. So, hope all during the day you've been thinking about what are topics that I would want to discuss. Wow, this thing's got some wheels. What are topics I'd want to discuss with my colleagues? We're going to have 2 40-minute sessions. There's going to be 4 corners of the room discussion areas, right? And we're going to do some open space. So I'm actually going to explain what open space is, actually. So first of all, if you just want a short definition, it's a deep dive discussion circles, right? They're not leader-led. They're not, lectures. The idea is they're discussions amongst peers. We're going to be moving chairs into a circle to do it, or, approximating closely a circle. It'd be a circle in your mind. It doesn't really matter. Thank you. And it begins with a specific topic chosen by attendees, which we're going to do now, right? We're going to make our schedule. And I say it begins with because often topics start one place and go completely somewhere else, which you'll see in a minute is just fine. So there's some principles of the open space, right? First one, whoever comes is the right people, right? So we don't need an expert, or maybe we have all experts. It really doesn't matter. We're all newbies. It really doesn't matter. Whoever are the right people there are the right people there, and the conversation will generally go to a meaningful and useful spot. Whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened, right? So we expected to talk about, best practices for some part of Kubernetes, and we ended up talking about our AWS bill, right? That's the best. That's what happened is what was supposed to happen, and we have to kind of embrace that idea. When it starts, it's the right time. Sometimes conversations get a little, need a little time to kind of wind up, or sometimes people jump right into it. When it starts, it starts. And importantly, when it's over, right? Don't feel compelled to sit around and have to rehash things over and over again. Move on to another topic, or if you want to move over the margaritas and and continue the topic, that's fine as well. But don't feel compelled like you have to stay talking to those same people the whole time. And something very important that people find very weird. Oh, start. Can we restart that? Just go back to the last one there. One more. There we go. Okay, you must abide by the law of 2 feet. I don't know if you can see this or not, right? But it basically states this. If at any time during our time together, you find yourself in any situation where you're not learning or you're not contributing, then you must use your 2 feet and go somewhere else, right? And don't feel weird about it. And the people in the group do not feel hurt that the person left. Maybe they want to see another talk. Maybe they have to get a margarita. Who knows what it might be. But the law of 2 feet is in force at all times. Don't just sit there and be like, gosh, I don't like this. And at the same time, don't feel bad like, why is everybody leaving the circle? Again, because whoever is the right people there are the right people for the conversation. So does that make sense to anybody? Any questions about that? No? Sound good? Okay, so we're going to have 4 spaces for this, right? Number 1 is in the corner back there. Number 2 is going to be in the corner over there. 3 is going to be somewhere by Kurt. Raise your hand, Kurt, or in the middle here somewhere. And 4 is going to be kind of in that corner over there. So what we're going to do now is if you have an idea, a topic, please come up. I've got Post-it stickers here that you can write the topic on. And we're going to do a quick show of hands, see who wants to talk about it. And then we're going to, so come on up. I say you stand up. Come on up.